So what can be done to help students transition successfully into adulthood?
It really starts with not when the transition is happening, when they're graduating from high school potentially and moving on to the next step, but a few years earlier. The biology of ADHD is a good place to start to understand what's happening and what might be leading to some of these problematic factors. Here's the basics. We all have genes that have an influence on who we are and how we act. In people with ADHD in particular, there are certain collection of genes that seem to be working differently than a typical person. One of the main areas of the brain that is affected by the genetics of ADHD is the reward center of the brain, and in particular, the transmission of a chemical called dopamine. The neurons in the brain of a person with ADHD act differently than they do in a person without ADHD. They need higher levels of stimulation from their environment, from their life, to produce typical levels of dopamine. There's several ways that this undermines motivation and executive functions in kids. One of the kind of simple ways of thinking about this is that on average, during typical situations, less dopamine is moving around in the brain. There's less stimulation than the average person. And so you can see that translating into prominent motivation difficulties in kids with ADHD. It also undermines executive functioning.
Ooh, executive functioning. We'll talk more about that tomorrow.